New Britsky. Okay, all right. And let's talk a little bit about your service. Tell us which branch of the service you were in. When did you serve?
I was in the Army Air Force, and at the compliment of the government, I was drafted. And I wanted to get in the Air Force, so I applied for all the tests they would give for air personnel. So I took them. I was accepted hands down, no problem.
How long did you stay in the service, Joe? What years were you in?
I was in there 2.5 years. And I went to a B-17 school in Biloxi, Mississippi. Stood there about 12 months, and then they sent me out to Las Vegas, where there were no B-17s.
We're going to talk about that in a minute, Joe. Before we get on to that, why don't you tell me what year were you drafted? Do you remember?
1943.
Drafted in 43, and you were discharged. You left the service when?
And then I went down to Berlin. I was accepted there, passed the physical, hands down. And next thing I knew, I was in, the first place they sent me was Fort Devens of Massachusetts.
All right, let's talk about that for a second. And so before we talk a little bit about that, you were drafted. You were here in New. What were you doing at the time you were drafted?
I was working at Colts, making 30 caliber machine guns.
And how did you find out you were drafted?
It's congratulations, you have been accepted. That was the greeting everybody got when they were drafted. And we were examined down in Berlin, Connecticut. And there was one guy, he had a bunch of papers, and he had heart trouble, he had everything else. And he says, I'm in bad shape. But when he was rejected, he ran by me like I was going backwards. That'll make you smile, right?
And you reported to the draft board, right?
Right.
All right. How'd you do on the physical?
The physical is no problem. None. Then they gave us our shots, one in each arm at the same time. So you didn't know where to look. You just stood there and take them.
Were any of your friends drafted along with you in 43?
Oh yeah, from New Britain there was some more. Yep. And one guy, a good friend of mine, he got down there and they gave him another physical and he was rejected. He had a hernia.
Where did you graduate? Did you go to high school in New Britain then?
Well, I quit school in 12th grade, and because of family problems, money. So I was 9 of the 10 kids in the family. And so, you know, I don't have to expound on that. When you're 9 of 10, you're in the back of the line, you get the old used shoes and pants and everything else.
Did you have any of your brothers get drafted with you or in the service?
No, I only had one brother. He was in California, San Jose. And he was in the Navy Air Force. He was stationed in the West Coast. That was the. Then I had the brother John, who in World War I he was in the service. He was in the Navy also.
So you get drafted, you go down and report, you pass your physical, what happens next?
Well, what they do is they tell you to go home and wait till you hear from us. And then the next thing I know, report to Fort Devens,
And where's that?
Massachusetts.
Okay, and you reported to Fort Devens, what happened there?
That was the first step of the induction. If you didn't pass that physical, you were out. And after a while, when I became accepted for airplane engine and airplane mechanic and flight engineer, I was happy about the whole thing, except I have a 3-month-old daughter when I was drafted. And I didn't see her till she was a couple of years old. Yeah. Yep.
What happened after, so you go to Fort Devens, and what they do?
Well, they told you that when you got to Devens, and if you passed all your physicals and so forth, and written tests and oral tests, they sent you to where you were qualified. And I told you previously I wanted to be in the Air Force. So I got it. They gave us all kind of tests, and they were very simple, but they were important. And that's where I went. From there, I went to Greensboro, North Carolina. I took basic training. That's physical. You go through all sorts of calisthenics in there. And from there, once you pass that, you are assigned to your permanent base. And that was in Biloxi, Mississippi.
And what kind of a base was that?
It was a airplane engine school.
And so you qualified to be what kind of, what were you doing with the airplanes then?
Well, I have a letter here somewhere from someone in the services. It was fortunate that you were put in the Air Force. That's why we won the war. You guys kept them all working. And we had a good group. The Air Force, they weren't highly educated, but they were smart. Because where they were assigned to, they were good.
What was your rank when you got down to Biloxi then?
What was my rank?
Rank.
I was a buck private, and when I got out, I was a buck sergeant.
And what were you doing? Were you an engineer then, or were you a mechanic? What were you actually doing on the...
Yeah, working on planes. Yep.
Okay. You said you wanted to be in the Air Force, or the Air Force. Why?
Why? It appealed to me when I was 8 and 9 years old. I used to buy kits and make airplanes and fly them. And that's how it was interesting.
How long were you in Biloxi?
In Biloxi, we were there, I think, let's see. They had a plane there at Biloxi, a B-17, and they had a lot of B-17, no 24s. But this B-17 went for 30 missions. Mississippi Belle, I think the name of it was. And it was shot up, and wrecked all of a sudden, came back with all this damage. They came back and landed, and that was it.
Tell us about the B-17s. What do you remember about that plane?
A B-17 had how would you say? The people preferred B-17s or 24s. They used to always tell us a bumblebee aerodynamically couldn't fly. and he could the 24. That's what's the same. But we didn't tell them that, and so they flew.
Give me, you get down there, your first duty down there. You had been working in the manufacturing plant here in New Britain. You get down to Biloxi. That's a big change. You were 24, 25 years old
Right.
at the time. Tell me what an average day was like down there in Biloxi.
Well, they wanted to keep you happy, so first thing we used to run around the airport with 6 miles in the morning. And we thought we'd outsmart the physical instructor. There was one place that was covered with trees, and we used to sneak across the airport and wait for them to come by, and we'd get in formation and run the last quarter of a mile. So, you do all these foolish things, but you get caught eventually. And then they tell you push up until you can't move.
Did you serve any time in the
brig?
War at all in the brig?
No. I behaved. There was one time when we were in Biloxi, a whole group of pilots and crew came back after they did 30 missions. So you did 30 missions and you were all set. You didn't have to fly them. And what happened was the commanding officer wasn't too bright. He put all these seasoned pilots in with rookies and everything else who went on KP and did menial tasks and so on. And the ones that did the 30 missions didn't like that at all. They used to call this lieutenant everything in the world. And they had a right to. So what happened, it boiled down to a general, a 4-star general, came to Biloxi and put us out in that nice hot sun and stand at attention out there and air your dislikes. And we told him we didn't think it was fair to take a guy that flew 30 missions in combat and put him on KP. So the general, he was understanding. He shipped them all out to a processing place where they prepare them to let them go. And it was right. He was right. And from Biloxi, we went to Las Vegas.
Let's talk about, before you leave Biloxi for a minute. Was the whole town had to be full of military personnel? Biloxi still is today, I think.
They were not too sociable towards the military.
Really?
I used to get in town and stand on a corner and hitchhike for 4 hours to get a ride back to the base.
That's not exactly the picture that a lot of Americans have been presented with the respect for the. We had so many people in the military at that time. Why was that?
I don't know. Well, there were some of the whites that were with us. They couldn't stomach the blacks, which I thought were part of the company. Hell, they didn't have anything to do about being made black. They got in there and they did what they're supposed to do. So these guys that did the 30 missions, I never saw them again. They were gone. And the general gave me the order to disband them.
What other signs of discrimination did you see down there?
You want me to tell you what they used to say?
Yeah.
When the blacks used to get on the bus, and if they didn't sit in the back seat, quote, "Nigger, in the back where you belong." That's what the feeling, and that didn't go over. It was, you know, a lot of people say, "Oh no, that didn't happen." I was there. I heard it.
But you didn't have any trouble with them inside the...
None whatsoever.
Yeah.
None.
How did that make you this was really your first trip at the time into the South at the time. How did it make you feel?
Well, they didn't say anything against us. The majority of the people, I would say, would accept the blacks. I mean, you know, what's what? Right? They did their job and that was it.
How big a group how big a team did you work with that worked on the planes?
Oh, something, all depends what you do. If you're just changing an instrument, one guy would do it himself. But if you have to change an engine, you get a crew, and they have a special part of the crew with a hoist and stuff, take the engine off and stuff. And that was another thing we did when the war ended. Well, it was pretty coming down to a close. They flew all the surplus planes to Enid, Oklahoma, a desert. They put them out there and they come up with acetylene torches and stuff, cut the engines right off, drop them on the ground so nobody could get them. That's how, that was good.
So you went from Biloxi then to
Las Vegas.
Tell me when was that? How long were you in Biloxi before you shipped out to Las Vegas?
Well, I don't know exactly how, but it was over a year in Biloxi.
So tell us about Las Vegas. Why did they send you there? What did you do there?
Las Vegas? Las Vegas was an advanced school, and that was primarily a gunnery base. We used to get planes in shape. They were all fitted with 50 caliber machine guns, and they had dummy models out in the desert, sitting out in the, and you fly missions with live ammunition and hit these things out in the desert. And that's before you send them out.
You were working on the B-17 in...
F-24s. We went out to Vegas and there were no 24s. But that changed real fast. The 17s all were gone and the 24s came in.
Tell me about the 24. What was that like? And how did that compare to the 17?
Well, I think the 17 could be beat up a lot more than the 17.
Than the 24?
Yeah. Yeah, but that was just my own personal opinion. They were an easier plane to fly, I think. Like I told you previously, a bumblebee is not supposed to fly aerodynamically. Neither was the 24.
How was life different in Las Vegas than it was in Biloxi for you?
Night and day.
Tell me about that.
The pictures I have here, these were all taken in Las Vegas. That doesn't look like we're suffering, right?
All right, let's see if we can get a shot on that. I'll try and move this over here a little bit. Hold it right up there for me, and I'll see if I can get kind of close in on that. Okay, I don't know how well we're seeing that from our viewers' point of view, but almost looks like a candlelight dinner.
Right. And here's another one.
And which one are you in that one?
The middle one.
You're the middle guy with the big smile and
Yep.
the beer in front of him.
Yep.
All right. No, it looks like you enjoyed you had your moments, huh?
Well, Las Vegas wasn't bad. At Mount Charleston in Las Vegas, there was a rest and recreation for pilots that came back not too well. That they had a medication problem. And we went up to Mount Charleston, and it was like a camp. No work, just good food. Go on a ski jump, and as you can go out. I know one time there was a guy named Mortimer. He was from Pennsylvania. He was there for R&R, rest and recreation. He got up on the top of the ski jump on a sled, a regular sled. He went down to jump, and when he came off and hit the bottom, the sled stopped, and he kept going. That's how it was.
Tell me about chow.
Chow?
Chow.
The chow in the Army, I consider, was very good. It was good.
What were you eating?
It was better than most of the people had at home. Yeah.
What kind of food were you eating? And was it? And this would be then in the
Well,
cafeteria or wherever, right?
yeah, they had long lines of food. It's just like you go to a restaurant now, and they have a buffet, and you go there, and they just throw something on your plate, and you go. If you take it, you eat it. So, which was fair. Some people load the plate and didn't eat it. They had to eat it. All the mechanics were issued a toolbox with all the tools you need. And you put them in a rack, and when you go to work on a plane, you go to the rack, pull your toolbox out, and go to work. Well, I put this one up in the nose of a B-24. And a B-24 with the nose wheel. And as we were coming in for a landing, they would open all the doors for the wheels in the wings and the other ones, and the wheels would come out and the doors would open, the wheels would come out. Well, my toolbox was up in front, and when you take off the plane, it's going up like this, and it vibrated, and the box slid onto the doors for the nose wheel. And they didn't open then until the pilot lowered the wheels. And these two doors opened up in that nose wheel. Never saw it again.
Where was the plane headed?
Oh, here in Chicago.
And what happened to the toolbox?
I can't tell you, I don't know. All I saw, it was going down so nice. And I got a new toolbox.
That's one way to do it.
Yeah.
You had a close moment too, didn't you? I mean, you had a situation that was.
Rita come out to visit me in Vegas. That's where we were training gunners for combat.
And Rita was your wife, right?
Right. And she came out by train and stood in the baggage car for 3 days coming out to see me. There were no seats. It was like a mail car with benches and stuff for 3 days. Coming back though, understanding captain got me a space on the flight back home with a bed and everything. There was good people in there.
Didn't you have a situation? You also had a situation. I remember where there was wasn't there a crash?
A what?
Wasn't there a crash of a plane that you were supposed to be on?
Well, this one here, when Rita came out to visit me, Mortimer, who slept next to me, I asked him, Mort, do you mind if you take my flight? I was supposed to go up for a 4-hour flight Gunnering man. He said, no problem. Well, they took off with 14 guys, and number one engine, that's the first engine on the left, died when they took off. So he got the okay to go around and come back. And what does he do? You never bank on a dead engine, because the other two push you right over like this. And they all got killed, 14 guys.
And you were supposed to be on that plane.
And I went home on this train ride with all the coffins on it, coming back east.
You were lucky.
I was lucky there. And then I got a ride on a flight with, I think it was an A-26 or something. It was a twin engine bomber from Texas, that one was from Texas to Andrews Field in Washington. Landed, I got off, plane took off, 2 minutes later, blew up. That was it. When I come back to base, everybody was flabbergasted. They said, you got killed. I said, yeah. That was it.
Tell me a little bit about you have your wife Rita, who's wonderful, still with us and you today, which is great. You also had a daughter at the time.
3 months old when I went in.
When you went to the service, right? How did you stay in touch with Rita?
I wrote a letter every day to Rita. You want to tell her what happened to him?
And why don't you tell us what happened to him?
Well, she saved them all. Somehow or other, they weren't saved. But she still says it's up in the attic in the old house we lived in. But we don't own the house, so we can't go up there.
Was that hard to be apart from them?
That was the worst 30 months of my life. Not constantly. When you're working and you're doing things, your mind is different. But it was not the place to be. But they made it as good as they could be, the commanding officers. Some were good, some were not. Well, I had one, I won't mention his name. My mother was about to pass on, and I asked him for a furlough. He says, look, I'm married, my wife is in it with me, why should you go home? That's his attitude. He was a rebel, and he didn't care about the Yankees. That was it. And I went above him, and he didn't like it, and I got the furlough.
Did you ever come close to going overseas?
We were all going to Burma, the hump, and we all taken a physical. And I think I mentioned this one. The captain gave me a test. He says, you know, you got a hernia on the left side? I says, I don't believe you. You're dreaming. He says, go see the general in charge of all the hospital. So I went down there. He says, what's your problem, soldier? This captain said I had a hernia on the left side. Well, let's look. He looked at it and he says, yep, you got one on the right side. I says, he said left side, you said right side. Let's look again, he said. You know what? This is exact word. You got one on both sides. So I went to the base hospital, and all the guys went to Burma. And when they went overseas, or any type of combat, they get 2 points for 1 point for every month or whatever. And they all got home earlier than I did, because I spent 76 days at the base hospital rubbing backs and changing bedpans, and
Are you telling me you would have rather have gone to Burma?
it was what?
Are you saying you would have rather have gone?
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. You don't worry about what's going to happen. You worry the present. That's all.
So, did you, you were there, you said you were in the military for 30 months, is that
Yeah.
correct? So that would have, you would have left then sometime in 45?
Yes. Or the beginning of 46 or end of 45. I got my work orders downstairs. I will find them someday. Whenever you were transferred, they would make a big to-do about it. Your name would go down. You're going to here and going to there. You will report at 800 hours and this and that. Everything was cut and dried. So I knew they were going to get out before I did, because they get 2 points for my 1. That was it.
You were a guy who, you were already, you were 25 or so. You must have had some did you have younger guys in with you, or were you all about that mid-20s age group working on these planes? All about the same age?
Once in a great while, you would have an old army man he would supervise you, watch you. Not that you didn't know what you're doing, but he wants to make damn sure that the plane's going to fly. So that was it.
Everybody get along pretty well?
Yeah. You had to get along because you make an enemy and it becomes worse.
You have any friends that you left when you got out that you still maintained contact with?
There was one fellow, Manny Newman. He was from California, and we were like this. He was exactly the same build I was. If he wanted to go to the town for something, he'd borrow my jacket and my pants, and vice versa. I would take his. That's how good we were, and I got his picture right here. Manny Newman, and I tried and tried, and I could never locate him. Never.
What'd you do when you got out?
The day I got out, Ed Morency, who was a service manager, the day I got out, I was invited to his house, and we played cards for money. You know, we're men now. And he says, "What are you going to do, Joe?" I says, "I don't know, I just got out." He says, "Report to me tomorrow morning, and I'm going to put you on my crew." And then I was on the road servicing refrigerators, stoves, air conditioners, washers, and everything. One day,
Where was this? Where were you at the time?
in Hartford,
Well, you're back home then.
yeah. And he says, "Boy, here's a good guy all trained, and I'm going to hire him." So he hired me. That was,
How long did you do that kind of work for?
it seemed like 50 years, but it was, we had a good time. Then I became the service manager, and I would get in there early in the morning, and this was a place in East Hartford, American Distributors. I would get in before the crew come in, and all the calls that came in the day before, 2 days, I would pick them out and sort them out to the ones who were most capable of fixing these calls, and give them to this particular man, these to this, and we would go out and fix it. And I would take some too, and go out. And we had one guy working, he was a Polish lad. And I gave him some calls in New Britain. And when he got there, he didn't know New Britain from New York. And he called me and he says, Joe, I'm lost. I says, where are you? Just look at the sign, tell me what the... Well, he says, there's a sign that says, walk and don't walk. That's right. That doesn't tell me anything. Walk and don't walk. Finally, I got him back, and he was all right. We had good times. Walk and don't walk.
Did you join any of the veterans organizations? Did you do anything there?
I belong to Rita, the one from American Legion, on there.
You joined the Legion.
Yeah.
You joined. That's fine. That's all we need to know. That's fine. You joined the.
I still belong to it.
And still belong to the Legion. Couple things, Joe, just kind of winding up. Is there anything I didn't ask about in your military career, that those 30 months that kind of, as you think back on that, kind of pop into your mind, either an incident, an event, anything at all?
Well, I said that B-24s weren't as popular as 17s, but we had one pilot, and when we were in Vegas, the Grand Canyon was a great attraction. And he used to take the plane and go right down in the canyon and fly. I said, what if you come to a dead end? He says, what are you worrying about? That was a pilot.
Well, the pilots had to be pretty courageous guys.
Well, some of them were foolhardy, and most of them, they valued their life. Yep. And it was one other time, went down to El Paso. I was on a C-45. That's a twin engine, a smaller plane. We landed in a 86 training plane, ran right up and chopped the back of our plane right off. Because it was just a propeller job. Nobody got hurt, nothing. But when he landed too close, I blamed that to the tower. Because the tower shouldn't have told him not to land. He landed right in back of us, and we slowed up and he kept running coming. And that propeller cut the back tail right off the plane.
As you look back on those 30 months in the military, Joe, were those good months?
What was that?
As you look back on your military career, those 30 months you spent
Right.
here stateside, was that a good experience? Was it just something you just happened to, I had to do it? How do you think about those?
I think it gave me some things I never would have gotten if I were not in the service. They teach you how to get along with other people. They teach you a good trade. And they tell you about food. You don't waste it.
And that's something that has stuck with you till today.
Sure. Other than that, that one had the tail cut off. That got me stuck down in El Paso for a while. And while I was there, I went over to Mexico and I bought a bottle of tequila. And each bottle of tequila had a little worm in it. You remember that? And I give it to the pilot. I said, when you get back to the base, give it to this guy and I'll get it when I come back. Never saw him, never heard nothing again. He took it home. That was it. Tequila.
Thank you, Joe. Thanks for talking to us.
Well, I don't know, not very interesting, but
I think it was.
It was.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah.
We're just glad to have you still around.
You know, when we went up to Devon's, they had an old army man, a sergeant. He says, now all you rookies, I know what you got. You got a bottle with you, you're taking. I'm going to come with a basket. Nothing will be said. You put the bottle in this basket. I think he's still drinking whiskey today yet.
Rank has its privileges, Joe.
Everybody that had a bottle put it in his basket.
Good. Good job. Nice work.